You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and Verna Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Once again, and welcome to another journey into the unexplored, the unexplained Ecto Portal. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and I'm here with my co-host,
Verna Wilson.
And today is actually a pretty exciting episode because this is one that a lot of people are going to identify with because everybody's hopefully gone to Disneyland or at least heard of
the happiest
Disney.
Episode on Earth.
The happiest episode on Earth. Happiest haunted episode on Earth. Because, of course, it's haunted Disneyland. And in fact, it's actually haunted Disney theme parks around the world, so it's not just Disneyland. But for the most part, generalization, it was the first park. We're going to go with haunted Disneyland.
If you're trying to get away from spooks, Disneyland is not an escape. Sorry.
No, absolutely not. In fact, all that energy from all over the world on a continual basis of millions and millions of people
just keeps adding.
Yeah, you're going to just... Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of good energy, too.
Disneyland yeah, there's great energy in Disneyland. Yeah.
So, you were talking about how you said you thought you had experiences or felt stuff when you went to Disneyland, correct?
Yeah, I first went there when I was 16 years old, and I believe that was back in the...
1800s?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
back
1800s.
When the park first opened.
Right. Yeah, this was... this was back in those sometime in the late 70s, and I'm not going to give my age away, but I kind of am I? But I was there with my family and our friends, mm-hmm. and they had one of our friends had a thing for going on Small World. He just loved Small World. I can't stand that song, but to please him, we all went on it. Uh-huh. So we're going along Small World, and you know how it is. They're all dancing back and forth, singing the song.
The
and
dolls, yeah.
Yeah, and we're sitting there in the car, and everybody's enjoying it.
20 minutes of sheer terror.
Right, and I'm sitting there, and I was only 16 years old, so of course the whole thing was kind of boring and silly to me. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I was trying to move, and I felt somebody next to me, and I thought it was like one of my family or one of my friends. And then I realized on the other side of me, there wasn't anybody there, but I could have sworn I really bumped somebody.
Did you knock Linda into the water?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, you know how those seats are when you're sitting there. There's
boats,
they're usually they're very small, and
these are wide now. Was it small when you went? Because they're really wide, large boats that can handle like 4 people per row now.
Okay, they were a little smaller back then.
Oh, okay, that's probably true. They probably made them bigger and stuff later.
Yeah, it was a little smaller, and there was my mother was sat next to our friend. And then I don't think Linda was on this ride with us. I don't think Linda wanted to go on it.
Good choice, Linda.
Yeah, figures. And then I think it was his daughter who came with us.
Oh, okay.
So she was in the front with my mom and her dad and laughing about it. I think I sat by myself because on the back seat because I was like, oh, Small World, blech, And so I was trying to shift. You know how you shift and you move, and I swore I bumped somebody, and I'm going, wait a minute. And I'm going, who was that? I thought, did I bump somebody? And I thought, nah, it's just me. And so we're trying to get through the ride and everything. And I did it again. And I swore I bumped somebody again. And I'm thinking, and I was only 16. And I thought, okay, this is weird. This ride is starting to feel really weird. And I was only 16. I didn't think about that. And then when we got off and everything, actually my mother turned around. She goes, "Were you having a hard time sitting back there?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "It felt crowded." And she said, "Well, you had plenty of room and you seemed struggling." And I'm like, "I don't know." I just kind of shrugged like, that was my first experience.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And of all the rides, Small World.
Small World out of all the rides. Now, what about
not Haunted Mansion, not Pirates of the Caribbean, but the first one
No, Haunted Mansion was the second one.
But I'm saying your first one was
on Small World, yeah, out of all the rides. But I'm not surprised though, because it is one of the older rides though. One of the oldest ones there.
It's actually the first big ride, I think, that gave them the hope that they could make Disneyland, because that was in the World's Fair, was the Small World ride.
Right, and I understand what the ride's trying to convey. Convey togetherness. Everybody's respecting each other and everything. Because Disneyland's supposed to be like that.
Yep.
But it's an old ride, and the boats were smaller, and it felt like more people were joining us than was present.
Yep.
It just felt that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've been to Disneyland. The first time I went to Disneyland wasn't until, believe it or not, the late 90s.
Oh, well, that's when you came here, though, or were you on a trip here?
No, this is when I lived in Washington still.
Okay.
And I went to Disneyland, then Disney World, then back to Disneyland again.
Mm-hmm.
But I never went to the first time was in the late 90s. In fact, when I went, they were just breaking ground on California Adventure, so you could stand up on these large podiums and actually look out at the construction of the new theme park. So for most people back then, it was a giant parking lot. You would park, you'd go to the Disneyland. But that giant parking lot is now gone and is now California Adventure Park.
Oh, I love that park. I love the way they decorate it.
And then the parking's now in a parking garage, which makes much more sense. But when I went, you could actually climb up the giant scaffolding on the stairs and look out at the construction of the new park. So that was kind of cool. I took some pictures of that. As far as feelings in Disneyland, there's so much going on. That, I mean, unless you...
You have to be real perceptive to feel it, because it's so crowded and there's so much stimulation there.
But I'm saying unless something really aggressive or powerful happened to you.
Sure.
There's so much energy of other people that are excited around you. There's so much distraction going on. I didn't, because I wasn't looking for it. I didn't go to Disneyland to perceive or investigate.
Right.
In your sense, it happened to you.
It just happened,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? It's something that happened to you as opposed to you were looking for it. You weren't really looking for it.
Oh, right. No, of course not.
So in that perspective, I've never had an experience at Disneyland myself of anything weird or unearthly or paranormal, I guess. At any theme park, not even Disney World, for that matter.
And that's how it should be, I think, because you go there to have fun. You don't think about it. And if it happens, it happens. But, of course, nobody ever plans that kind of thing when they're in a park like that.
No one's ever going to do that.
No.
I mean, can you imagine if you did? Yeah, I'm going to see some ghosts when I go to Disneyland.
Well, you never know with people. I mean, if people hear about it, they might actually look for it, but it's not something that, even if you are looking for it, I don't think it's something that can really jump out at you, really.
No, in fact, but I would love to investigate Disneyland with nobody in it.
That would be really good.
Now, that would
be
different.
awesome.
I think you would have to almost take 3 or 4 night investigations because it's such a big park.
And get special permission, yeah.
There's so many places that you can investigate, and it's so big, but you would never ever get that permission. Disney would never want anything to inhibit people not going to the park because it's haunted. They would never want that. I guarantee you.
I don't even think that you really need to have that kind of special permission, because when I was there last time with you, when you go on some of the older rides, like the Haunted Mansion, and Pirates of the Caribbean, and you're riding through those tunnels, you can feel the energy in there. You can feel.
But you can't investigate.
No, of course you can't investigate, but you can really feel it. And I know that tons of people take pictures.
Of course.
In Disneyland, of course they do. And there's a lot to take pictures of, because the visual imagery of those rides But I bet you anything, someday somebody's going to capture something in those pictures.
Yeah.
Or somebody is going to...
Some actually have.
Oh, well, then there you go. And some people are going to probably feel something and talk about it someday.
Mm-hmm.
And in those rides, I felt something riding through those rides. And I remember even when I was younger, I would feel energy going through those rides. But I wasn't able to voice it as much as I do now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You were on the ride with me, and I remember telling you when we were on the Haunted Mansion ride, I was saying, do you feel the energy around here? And you said, yep. I remember you telling me you did, but it's not unusual for you and I to feel something like that.
I think it's because it's one of the most popular rides with people.
Mm-hmm. And one of the older ones.
And those two rides are very, very popular people. And they're both about 1968 and I believe 1969. So they were years after the park opened, like 10 years after the park opened, more than 10.
Yeah.
So, but they're still some of the most popular. So that could be why there's that much energy around.
And I love those rides. I think my favorite image is when the pirates are in the prison, and the dog has the keys in his mouth, and they're holding a bone trying to get the keys from the dog.
Give us the key.
That's my favorite image. When I always laugh when I see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we should start on. There's actually lots and lots of stories from parks, Disney theme parks around the world
Definitely.
that have paranormal connections and stories behind them. So I think we should start off with some of those stories.
Yeah.
So let me go ahead and start with the Dolly's Dip on the Matterhorn.
Oh, right.
If you've ever ridden the Matterhorn, it's the giant snow bobsled ride. Around the mountain, through the mountain, you see the giant snow monster. There's actually...
The Matterhorn's still there, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah, of course it is. Famous ride.
Very, very popular ride. In fact, inside there's a small little basketball court for the employees to play basketball.
Oh, wow.
And they used to have people pretend they were climbing the mountain. Because back in the day, I've seen pictures and video of characters of people like they're climbing the mountain because it's a snowy mountain.
Oh wow,
to give it kind of realism. But they haven't done that in years because I've never seen that myself. So I don't think they do.
That really adds to the atmosphere, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes it look like it's a big snowy mountain that you're going to go bobsledding on. But this particular story starts in 1984. Dolly Young was riding on the Matterhorn. This is a guest on Tomorrowland's side. Now, there are two tracks that go through the ride, one near Tomorrowland and one near Fantasyland.
I never knew that.
I didn't either. Dolly was alone in the back seat, and a child was alone in the front seat. Now, in the middle of the ride, Dolly unbuckled herself, supposedly to assist in the child in the seat in front of her. She stood up just before the dip where the other track crosses over the track that she was riding on. She hit her head on the bridge and fell into the track.
Ouch.
When the next sled came along, Dolly was run over, and the story was that they had to dismantle the track to dislodge her body from the actual ride.
That's ugly.
Word is Dolly now haunts the Matterhorn. Some people say they've seen Dolly, and this particular person said that they had worked on the ride for several years and never saw her, but they did feel her. And after the ride closes for the day, two people have to walk the track on each side of the mountain. You have to walk the ride starting at the bottom and working your way all the way to the top of the mountain. And it's done to look for lost and found items. And every time this person was lucky enough to get a track walking shift, they had an easy feeling that someone was watching them. And that they were always convinced it was Dolly, and that so they would often say, "Hi, Dolly," and the feeling was that it was the worst thing in the big cavern in the middle of the ride. And at Dolly's Dip, the spot where she died, in fact, the work lights in the tunnel near Dolly's Dip always seemed to be burned out. And in 6 years, this person said they didn't think they ever saw that those lights were ever working. And they hated running the track at the end of the shift and usually tried to get someone else to do it for them. So there you go. That's it. That's an interesting.
That's an ugly story. I mean, but you don't sit there. You don't unbuckle yourself in the middle of a ride.
No, and that's if you've been on the ride. It's a pretty.
I've been on the ride a long time ago.
It's a fast ride.
Yeah, years ago I went on it. Yeah, because don't they make sure everybody's seated and belted before?
Yes.
So she didn't need to assist that kid.
Well, who knows how lack it was. It was at one moment where they thought it was buckled and she unbuckled it. That could happen too.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, I mean, but
Because they check to make sure they're all buckled. But if
Yeah.
somebody unbuckles after they've checked them all, that could be the problem. The kid unbuckled it again.
Well, it could be, but yeah, but I mean, but unbuckling yourself and then all of a sudden the ride's going, oh yeah.
Could you imagine walking those tracks
No.
that late at night
No.
by yourself?
Well, I'm sure they're used to it after a while.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, probably they don't think about it unless they've read this before and they knew about this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Do you want to go ahead and share about the firehouse apartment?
Yeah, this one is when you. This mentions that when you enter Disneyland, you walk under the train tracks, and just after this, on the left side of the street, right next to the City Hall restrooms, is the firehouse. When Walt Disney was alive, he had an apartment on the second floor of the building, and he used to use it as a home base while the park was being built and stay there often after Disneyland opened. He also hosted celebrities and VIPs in his apartment, which would make sense there.
Yeah.
Now, whenever Walt was in the park, he would light a lamp in the fire station window to let people know that he was there. Now, apparently, Walt never left, according to this story. So, according to the Disney legend, soon after Walt Disney's death, a cleaning woman was cleaning the apartment and she noticed that the lamp was lit. She turned it off and left, only to see it lit in the window when she got outside. And then she did what anybody else would do in that situation. She went back into the apartment and she turned it off again. Mm-hmm. Now, when she went back outside, the lamp had been relit. So she went back again and she turned it off, only this time she didn't leave the apartment. And the lamp turned itself right back on in front of her.
Wow.
So nobody has tried to turn the lamp off since. I don't know why she didn't unplug it, but well, anyway.
Doesn't mean it would work.
Right, that's right. So it's left burning to symbolize Walt Disney's presence in his apartment in Disneyland. It's in other words, it's left there to symbolize his presence in the park. Mm-hmm. So to this day, cast members report footsteps and knocking coming from the fire station apartment, especially at night.
That's
so
interesting.
That is interesting.
Now, that's one of the few stories that I've heard. I think a lot of people know that story, that the light in the window means Walt is there.
Did we walk past that?
Every time you go into Disneyland, you walk past it. Do you know where?
Did we see that?
Do you know where City Hall is? Because it's where Lost and Found is.
I think
it's
so,
on your
yeah.
left-hand side when you go into Disneyland.
I think we did see a lit apartment there, didn't we?
Well, it's on top of the fire station. It's a small window. You have to really look.
Okay, because I know that we were going past some buildings that look like storefronts, and they look like little offices and stuff in one of those buildings, and some of them were lit up, but I don't know if that was one of them.
When you first go in, though, there's two sides you can go in, the left or the right. Mm-hmm. If you go through the left side, and the train's above you, if you go through the left side, you're going to see City Hall, mm-hmm. which is where Lost and Found, First Aid is, and information. It's like an information center.
Right.
And then just past that on the left is the fire station. And now remember, if you went through the right side, you'd go past the movie theater on the right.
Yes.
Or the Hall of Presidents.
Mm-hmm.
And then they both meet up into one street for Main Street. So it's on the left-hand side.
Yeah, I see it in
right
my
next
head.
to
I'm just trying to figure out whether I saw in my head that, well, you know what? You'll have to point it out to me next time.
I will.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'll check next time I go. Next month, I'll check for you.
You're going next month.
Yes, I'll take a picture for you.
Yeah, please do.
So I have some stories about the gift shops on Main Street.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
Now, many of the stores are supposedly haunted, and the fourth store's stockroom of the Star Trader at the exit of the Star Tours in Tomorrowland, it's a big round gift shop, mm-hmm. supposedly has cold spots and a really creepy feeling to it. There's also stories of the merchandise being rearranged on shelves after the shop is locked up for the night when nobody's around. And also that the Hatmosphere, the hat booth between the America Sings and Tomorrowland Autotopia, is haunted. Supposedly the sewing machine they used to embroider names on the hats never gets warm, even after being used all day long. And once someone saw a face in it, and that's what this particular person heard. One of the ice cream carts is supposedly haunted. People have reported hearing a woman's voice even though there's no woman around. But which ice cream cart is it? There's so many in Disneyland and Disney World.
Well, we were there on a hot day. If it was one of the ice cream carts that went past me,
She'd have to scream real
I
loud.
wouldn't have minded if the ghost screamed, "Stop, give her one."
Have some ice cream.
I was dying for an ice cream that day. It was hotter than Hades that day.
Exactly. So, speaking of Small World, go ahead and share the
Okay,
story.
I'm going to share a story about Small World. Here we go. So the story is that several cast members who worked on It's a Small World loved the ride so much that they came back to reside there even after they died.
Aw,
Yeah,
the last place I'd go, but okay.
that's the last place I'd go to. The legend is that lights will turn on and off, that the dolls will keep on dancing and singing after hours when the electricity has been turned off. That would drive me nuts.
Yeah, that would be hell. That would actually be
That
hell.
would be
If
hell.
you're being sent to hell, it would be that.
It would be. Now, the person who talked about this said that they worked on the ride for 6 years, and it was the very first ride that they learned way back in 1989. And this person claims that they remember having fun on their breaks walking through the ride. And they walk behind the seats, under the sets, even through the wall in the middle of the attraction. And there's a door that goes from the Antarctic region at the beginning of the ride to the final scene at the end. And it's a bit creepier in the dark portions, but it wasn't bad. Mm-hmm. So according to an account, a 12-year-old guest was visiting Disneyland with her family. They were enjoying their ride on Small World when the ride stopped and the lights came on. And the cast members helped guests off the ride. On the way out, the guest's mother snapped a few behind-the-scenes photos to finish off the camera roll. Outside, there was an ambulance and a police car. When the family developed the film later that day, the last photo on the roll appeared to be a figure hanged from the ceiling. And they weren't sure if it was a child, a cast member, or an animatronic. Yeah. So they weren't sure what it was. Now that's what I call creepy. That's even creepier than my story.
No, this goes with what you said about people taking pictures. They might capture some sort of evidence at Disneyland.
Exactly. I figured people might take pictures and capture something.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
I have a story about the woman in white at Disneyland.
I've heard about that story.
This is a pretty famous one if you've heard any haunted Disneyland stories. No matter where you go in the world, it seems like there's always a woman in white ready to give you an early heart attack. This one particular woman in white lingers in Disneyland, seems pretty benevolent, and according to those that have claimed to have seen her. The most prevalent story associated with her is that she's spotted often around Main Street and guides lost children in the park to guest services to be reunited with their parents. Overall, she's a helpful ghost.
So probably somebody who likes the park and
So
has
they're
good memories
La
of
Llorona.
it. And
They're La Llorona. See?
it's Disney's La Llorona.
Some
That's
people-
right.
But much nicer, but more Disney-fied.
A nicer La Llorona. Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Now this one is called Spaceship Earth. And it's about Epcot's Spaceship Earth,
Disney
where it
World,
takes
yep.
guests on a journey through time and the history of communication. And they mentioned that most people wouldn't expect to find ghost activity in this ride, but some may find some of the animatronics a bit spooky. And there were other reports of weird things at the end of the ride. The legends include the ghost of a boy and that of a blonde girl who allegedly resides near the ride. And one report said that the two were seen playing before vanishing just outside the entrance to the ride.
Interesting.
And another person claims to have seen the duo on the ride itself before disappearing. I wonder if it's two people who knew each other and they have lots of memories of this place. And
They loved that ride.
They love that ride, yeah.
You can never tell. I mean, I still think, and we've had this, you would probably agree with me. Mm-hmm. When I've recorded EVPs and I've done a lot of investigations, you'll find spirits that do travel together.
Sure.
It's like you're walking with your friends. So these two little kids might have been friends. They might have met on this other worldly plane.
Right.
And they want to go back to Disneyland, and they just have fun going on the rides and hanging out at Disneyland.
So they said, let's go on the ride again, and they
Yep.
do it, and then people spot them.
Now you got to
by
admit,
chance.
if you were dead and you come back as a spirit, or you're here as a spirit after you died,
Uh-huh.
Wouldn't it be great to be in Disneyland? Of all the places you could people watch, you could go on the rides, you could just have
And you
fun.
don't have to pay to get in. You can
No.
just go in the park and just enjoy yourself.
That'd be a great place to.
Yeah, it would be a good place to hang out.
So if I was going to haunt something, I think Disneyland would be or Disney World would be a pretty cool place.
Sure, and if you get tired of it, you can just leave.
You could, but I mean, why go haunt the parking lot across the theme? Why go haunt Target when you can stay at Disneyland?
Well, Target's fun to shop. I'm just kidding, but
To shop, but not if you're
not
you don't have a
not
way
if,
to-
not if you don't have a way to. That's true. I've never been on that ride, Spaceship Earth.
It's at Disney World.
Oh,
It's pretty cool. It's pretty big too. I went back in the 90s when I went there, and I think I went on it in 2005 when I was back at Disney World, but I don't remember.
no,
it
Disney
was
World.
fun.
Disney World is where in
Florida.
Florida. Yeah, that's that one. Yeah, I've heard the rides are different. I heard it's a totally different atmosphere in Disney World.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, the Magic Kingdom's pretty much the same. It's just sort of laid out a little bit different,
sure.
but most of the content's the same.
Okay,
So this next story is about Tom Sawyer Island.
I've never been on that either.
Now, the one at Disney World used to have a restaurant on the island.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
There's a playground out there for kids. There's Injun Joe's caves that you could go explore, and you can have fun on the island. And there was a Aunt Polly's restaurant. You could have lunch out there.
Wow.
And you take the little raft out, or you can go on the riverboat or whatever. Disneyland didn't have a restaurant on the island, but they have a fort out there.
Okay.
And also the Injun Joe caves. But you can go out there with the kids, and the kids can climb around on the it's a makeshift fort. It's Disneyland. They recreate. So they're building an early settlement fort that you can crawl around. Now, the ghost stories from Tom Sawyer Island aren't very specific, but there's been many claims of unexplained shadows seen around the island. Tom Sawyer's Island does feel a little bit different in its world compared to the hustle and bustle of the rest of the Magic Kingdom, which also probably explains why some report feeling off or eerie while walking to different parts of the island. But if you ran across a shadow in one of the caves, or if you were on the island by yourself, can you imagine?
Yeah,
It'd be kinda
I can
creepy
imagine
out
it would
there.
feel weird. Yeah.
And there's little nature trails and stuff in the trees too, so it is kind of isolated from the rest of the park.
But then that kind of explains what I feel about a lot of those rides. If you're walking around, or if you're walking near the ride, and it's not that crowded, you probably feel weird energy and spots things other people don't.
I would think so.
Yeah. So this one's called the Tower of Terror.
Ooh, one of my favorite rides.
The Hollywood Tower Hotel just doesn't. They mentioned that it doesn't contain ghosts straight out of the Twilight Zone on Walt Disney World's Tower of Terror. It also has real ghosts, at least according to stories from guests from Disney's Hollywood Studios park. The ghost story about that attraction contains a bellhop, a cast member who once worked at the attraction. The bellhop apparently died during one of his work shifts on the loading platform, and cast members and guests report that his spirit now haunts Platform D and causes mayhem with flickering lights and ride problems at the end of each day. Each day? Wow. So next time you ride that attraction, perhaps they said that you should fear the time in line before the ride more than the ride itself, which sends you plunging down an elevator shaft.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite rides. This story apparently happened at Disney World's version. So they have what's called Disney's Hollywood Studios. That's their version of California Adventure.
Oh, okay. Because I remember you went on an elevator ride similar to that, but I don't remember that's what it was called.
That's what it's called down in Disney World.
Okay.
And so they have two theme parks like we do. They have Magic Kingdom, and then they have Disney's Hollywood Studios. And that elevator ride, the Tower of Terror, was located in there. Now, the difference is recently at Disneyland, California Adventure, they got rid of the ride and replaced it with that Marvel the Marvel ride, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
So the ride is still predominantly the same thing. It's an elevator ride that goes up and down. You load, but they make it Marvel themed. But back then, it was based up to the famous Hollywood Hotel of the 30s, 20s and 30s.
Okay.
So the bellhops are all in their suits and have the little round hats on. And they had a haunted lobby with cobwebs, and it looked like old...
I think I like that theme better.
Oh, it was great. I loved it. It was the best ever. I took so many pictures. But, and then they recently got rid of the ride, and they turned it into the Marvel ride, which is sad. But the ride itself, when you load the elevators, the theme of the story is... somebody died years ago in using the elevator, and nobody ever uses that elevator anymore because it has a mind of its own. Something happens, and you get your bags, and they show you to your room, and they funnel you through, and these bellhops lead you onto elevators to go to your room. But every single person who gets on whatever elevator, there's like 7 of them back to back.
That sounds kind of cool, actually.
And the lights flickering happens on all the lights. It's not just one. So whoever saw that doesn't know that that's part of the ride. It's supposed to make it look creepy.
Oh, it's part of the ride. Okay.
You have to load the elevator from the lobby, from the basement.
So this really isn't a scary story. It's just somebody who misunderstood the ride, pretty much? Okay.
So once the bellhop seats everybody, they go, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to say something happened, and you have to use the old elevator that was out of service, but it's okay. It works, sort of." And then the bellhops looks at all the people sitting in the seats with their seatbelts and goes, "Have a nice ride," and the doors close. And then it's a dark ride. It goes around in the dark, and it goes through the Twilight Zone part where it's a giant eyeball. And
that sounds like fun.
And then it takes you to a long hallway, and you see the whole family who used to go in the elevator who died, and shows them plummeting to their death, and they disappear.
Oh, my.
And then you suddenly are in that elevator, and it goes up and down and up and down, and it opens up. You can see the park, and you scream. It's a lot of fun. But, yeah, I have a hunch this person just
didn't understand it.
The ride is supposed to set a mood, and that flickering light is there for a purpose.
Well, folks, that's not really a ghost story. It's somebody who misunderstood. Yeah. Now you know.
I'm going to debunk that because I've gone on that ride. So I've gone 5, 6, 7 times in a row. I love that ride. I miss it now.
Wow, I wish I could have gone on that.
I think you would have liked it better because it has the old Hollywood motif.
I like that better than Marvel.
Yeah, I liked Marvel too. I loved Guardians of the Galaxy. They did a great job, but I loved the other one. Okay, now your favorite.
Haunted Mansion. Yeah, I knew there was a story about this.
Imagine the Haunted Mansion being haunted.
Right, and they mentioned that there are several ghosts that haunt the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
And the first ghost story happened when the mansion was actually being built in the 1960s. One of the sound designers was in the seance room and heard music coming from behind a wall. He thought it was a radio, but there was never any talking or commercials, just music. So he kept hearing the music for days, and finally he decided to just put a speaker near the spot that the music was coming from so that he could mask it so that it can come out. Mm-hmm. And this person claims that when they worked at Disneyland, they heard a rumor that the spell book in the seance circle was a real spell book, and that Madame Leota was reciting a spell from that book. Rumor had it that each morning when cast members would arrive at the attraction to open the ride, they would find the book in a different place than it was from the previous night.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And there's also a story about a woman who came to the Haunted Mansion to sprinkle her young son's ashes in the ride since his dying wish was to be one of the Haunted Mansion ghosts. I don't even know if they would permit something like that.
They wouldn't. That's why she did it on the sly.
Right. She was told that she couldn't spread the ashes there, but apparently she snuck back and scattered her son's ashes anyway. After that, people reported seeing the ghost of a small boy crying near the exit. I guess he didn't want to be a Haunted Mansion ghost after all. So, that poor kid, he probably is thinking, where's my mom? Why am I still in this ride?
That bitch, no.
So before the Haunted Mansion opened in 1969, it's been said that a guest went on an early test ride and had a heart attack on that ride and died of fright. And this delayed the opening by... for an unknown amount of time.
Yeah.
And Disney denies the story, but the rumors persist. I guess you had to work there at the time to really know that. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the ghosts is the man with the cane, which is basically the apparition of a man with a cane who appears occasionally to guests and cast members. I've never seen him.
Nope, I've never seen him.
No. This man seems to love riding the attraction after dark, but when anybody tries to speak with him, he vanishes, leaving no trace of himself. Now, some believe that he's the ghost of a pilot who died in the 1940s when his plane crashed into the nearby Bay Lake. Oh, that's sad. And maybe he was a big fan of the Haunted Mansion, and now he wants to ride it whenever he can.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
See, what's funny is, that, especially with this particular story, the man with the cane, who's to say many people haven't seen him? He just doesn't look like a ghost or an apparition. He just vanishes. So they think it's a real person just getting on the ride.
Right, exactly.
I'm sure that's happened.
I've never seen a person with a cane get on that ride. I've seen mainly kids and families.
There's been handicapped because they have a special... you know, when you go into the Haunted Mansion, everybody funnels into that one room.
Yes.
And then the portraits get longer.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
And then you walk through, and finally you're at the rides. The
Right.
handicapped people go right to the buggies. So they skip all that.
Okay. It makes me want to go back on that ride again. Now I'm in the mood for it.
Just not on 106-degree weather a day.
Oh, no. The weather's got to be better next time.
That's why you go during the winter, Verna.
That's true.
So I'm going to tell about the ghosts in the rivers of America. Now, Rivers of America, of course, is the river that the giant Mark Twain riverboat goes around and around, and they use it for part of their late-night phantasmic shows and stuff. But so that river is Rivers of America. And as nice as the Lady in White is, the story gets back to the more spine-tingling side of things. The ghost himself isn't really all that scary. The story is straight out of a 1980s summer slasher. The story goes that two boys stayed in the park after hours and decided to take a swim in the pond that separated Tom Sawyer Island from the main park. The older boy drowned during the late-night swim. Since then, many have claimed to see unexplained ripples and splashing in the water late at night. Who's to say that's not a bird, though?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, it's awful that kid drowned. I mean, you shouldn't do these things after dark, especially when it's not safe.
Exactly. Now, there's one story I didn't find an article about, but I remember happening at the time. Right after I went to Disneyland in '97. There's another sailing ship besides the riverboat. There's also a sailing ship they use.
Okay.
And they use it in the Fantasmic when all the characters are riding the giant sailing ship and the riverboat. The sailing ship used to let people go on the sailing ship and walk around. And well, I read a story that a man and his family had been on the deck, and then one of the giant metal mast pieces unhooked. It broke, and it swung down and slammed right into his head.
Ouch.
And it literally killed him on impact. It impaled him on the deck.
Where did you hear that story?
In the newspaper when it happened.
Oh, really? Oh,
and
wow.
What's
You
interesting
should find the article.
Is I read this. In fact, I read this article just before I went to Disneyland. And I noticed that sailing ship had been blocked off. Nobody could use it. They didn't use it during the water show.
Right.
And the next time I went to Disneyland, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, it still was not being used.
Oh, because they probably figured it was unsafe.
Sorry, correction. They did use it in the water show.
Oh, they did, okay.
But they no longer let the public on it.
Oh.
So I have a hunch that incident is what they said, no way, we can't do this anymore. We can't risk something breaking and killing someone.
It had a kind of a bad luck aura about that.
Yeah, so that's pretty tragic to happen on board
That's
that ship.
very
So
tragic.
that was an interesting one that I remember reading about that. I was like, wow, Disney had to pay a settlement to the family, and it was pretty wild.
Yeah, that's sad. I can imagine accidents. I mean, they're probably aware that accidents might happen with these rides, and
Well, of course, I'm sure they do.
and they
all around
probably
the
test
world.
them, and they probably, test them over and over again for safety. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, this one is about the graduation night ghosts. Now, we all know that a lot of people on graduation night go to Disneyland.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's an annual tradition in Los Angeles where immediately following your high school graduation, you go to Disneyland, and you're given free reign over the park until 6 a.m. the next morning. That's a long time to go.
That is.
Yeah. So this person in particular went and found it far more crowded than it normally is, with a bunch of, teenagers doing silly things.
Yep.
So in 1966, one of those teenagers was a teen called Thomas Cleveland. He decided to sneak into the park by climbing across the monorail track. I heard it was easy to do that back then.
I don't know if I'd want to do that.
Yeah, I don't know either. So despite warnings from security guards, he tried to avoid the oncoming train by hiding beneath the track. Oh, that's silly. So there was only a few inches of clearance, and the train ran right over him. and he got sucked up into the mechanics.
Ugh.
And that's awful. And so the story goes that late at night, a ghost can be seen running along the monorail track and disappearing at the very spot where he died.
So that's almost residual.
Yeah, like a residual.
Residual haunting. You're
Yeah.
reliving that same moment over and over again.
Yeah. My stomach reading that. So.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another story about Haunted Mansion, but this one is in Disney World.
Okay.
Now, California's Haunted Mansion isn't the only one that has is host to an actual ghost of a little boy. In 2004, somebody wrote that allegedly they took a photo seen in their tweet of a boy while riding a haunted mansion at Disney World in Florida. You'll see the photo after clicking the link. It appears as though the child is peeking his head out of the doom buggy and looking directly back at them. This person wrote, not only was he not there when I took the picture, there wasn't a child of this age within 20 people in front of me in line. And as you can see, he's the only a few of the doom buggies in front of me. Not only that, what was he looking at? Why was he looking at me? There's no flash. There's no visible light coming from him. It's all infrared and invisible to the naked eye.
I see it. That's
absolutely
an
a
eerie
boy.
picture right there.
It's absolutely a little boy. So if you guys want to just go online and Google Ghost Boy Haunted Mansion, Florida, you're going to see this picture of him peering out of the
You should
doom
take a
buggy.
look. That's an eerie picture.
It is. It looks like he's smiling, though.
Yeah, it looks like he's smiling. He's kind of peeking like I see you.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, this one here took place in 1974. 18-year-old Deborah Stone was crushed to death while working as a hostess at the America Sings attraction in Disneyland. America Sings was located in the rotating theater that had previously housed the Carousel of Progress. On the evening of July 8th, she was caught between the rotating theater wall and the stationary stage wall and died as a result. So, okay, now it
Go ahead
rotates,
and
but
finish,
she had
go ahead and
okay.
finish
All
it
right,
and
all
then we'll
right,
talk about it.
all right. A safety light was put in, which warned the attraction's operator when people got too close to the area. Now, additionally, the stationary walls were later replaced with breakaway ones, and the building recently housed Innovations and Superhero HQ, although those attractions closed in 2016. So, anyway, as often the case when these things occur, one of the ways that people have coped with the loss of this is by creating a ghost story for it. And in this case, Deborah Stone has become what people call sort of a guardian angel. It's said that cast members working on the attraction, which was to open until 1988, used to hear a voice warning them, be careful if they got too close to the walls. Which, that's sad.
It is sad.
Oh my God.
Well, could you imagine? Because it's pulling, the stage stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's a round circular stage. The audience rotates. She got stuck in the wall between the two.
She didn't get...
As it rotated, she was stuck in the wall.
So she was probably trying to get through, and she didn't realize it was rotating, and she got,
So if you get caught, it pulls you in, and it rotates, and you're stuck in there, and it wrenches you in. Yeah. So, I mean, I saw Carousel of Progress in Disney World, so I know what the theater's like.
Yeah.
But the one at Disneyland, ever since I've ever been there, it's always been closed down. The only thing they recently opened it for a year or two ago was when the new Star Wars movies came out.
Right.
Since Disneyland hadn't built Star Wars Land yet, they had a Disney museum or a Star Wars museum with a lot of props and costumes, and they put that in that area where that theater used to be.
You know, thinking down memory lane in my mind, when I was 16 and I first went to Disneyland, I think that attraction was still there, and I vaguely remember it. But that's sad that happened.
Did you see America Sings or Carousel of Progress?
America Sings.
Okay, so
I
you saw
remember
the
that.
original, right.
Yeah.
It's funny, they took in America Sings, there used to be a riverboat with a bunch of birds and animals singing on it.
Yes.
They took that out of the ride and they put it in Splash Mountain.
Oh.
Yep, it's in the Splash Mountain ride, and if you ride the train around the park, you can see a quick glimpse of that part of the ride if you look down in the window.
Oh, wow, because America Sings was, if I recall very vaguely, that was a very popular ride.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's awful.
I thought that was a really sad story, and that's one of the more famous stories as well, that particular one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, This is the only one I found about the Pirates of the Caribbean, and the ghost's name is George, and it's at Walt Disney World. Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean ride is 18 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's only 10 minutes in Disney World.
Why is shorter?
Probably to get more people through.
Okay.
So they cut out some of the plume rides where you go drop down.
No, is it almost the same, the attractions and the visual?
Yeah, exactly the same. There's a part where you go around on the log ride in the dark.
Okay.
And then drop, and you go up and drop. They got rid of all that. One of the most famous tales, though, is that a construction worker named George fell to his death while working on the ride. And cast members and guests report that George now haunts the building that houses the attraction. And that's why cast members always say good morning and good night to him, because to do otherwise would mean that he makes their life miserable. George is often causes a lot of mischief for cast members, including causing the ride to break down, and makes phone calls to them from an empty control room. There's also a report that those who go on the ride and publicly state that they don't believe in George end up getting stuck on the ride because of a breakdown for a long time.
Well, next time I go on the ride with you,
George.
I'm not going to sit there and say, I don't believe George is here.
But this is at Disney World, so you don't
Disney
get
World.
Disney World.
Oh, okay, yeah, right. I'm thinking about Disneyland. Okay, that ride. I mean, I'm thinking about how can you fall from that ride?
Well, no. Remember, this is a construction guy.
Oh, right. Okay,
so
right.
he was probably high up above working on something and fell and died.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so
Exactly.
I'm remembering now. Construction. Yep, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, this one's about Space Mountain. I went on that one years ago, back in the 1980s, when we were celebrating my sister's birthday at Disneyland.
Ooh, roller coaster in the dark.
Yeah, that was fun. And my sister claimed that she felt it was haunted. Uh-huh. But I don't remember why she claimed that. I'll have to ask her next time. So there's a ghost who claimed to be the spiritual remains of a guest who died on the ride. And Mr. One Way is the name is given to the ghost, who supposedly hitches rides with single passengers, and then he vanishes before the ride ends. So the name, of course, comes from his fatal one-way trip on the ride way back in the 70s or 80s. They don't remember which era it was from.
So he fills the seats up when there's an empty seat?
He hitches a ride. So he probably asks for people, can I ride with you? And then he disappears when he's after he sits down. That's weird. That is weird. It is weird going through that ride.
He messes with people.
He messes with people, yeah.
Go ahead and do the next one, because I think it's connected to Space Mountain.
Disco Debbie?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, guests and cast members reported seeing what's called Disco Debbie. She's a glowing green ghost inside the ride who's reported to be a cast member who died of an aneurysm behind the Space Mountain building. Oh, that's sad. Mm-hmm. People reported seeing a man with reddish hair and a red face. He gets into a seat next to a single rider, and by the time the ride ends, the man has disappeared. Supposedly, this is a ghost of a man who died on the ride in the 1970s. They call him Mr. One Way, and he's sometimes seen in the cast member locker rooms in the Space Mountain building.
Okay, so that's the same.
It's the same person, yeah. Kind of a different telling of the story, but the same one.
That's interesting, though.
Yeah. Now, the next one's, isn't this kind of also a repeat?
Yeah, I'm gonna go right on and tell you a little bit about another ghost in the Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland.
Okay.
There's supposedly a little boy ghost who's seen in the video monitors. He can be seen in the control tower, caught on surveillance cameras. He always seems to be happy and enjoying himself, but when the boat comes back into the station, his boat is empty. It's also been said that Walt Disney's ghost and a couple other ghosts sometimes haunt the Disney Gallery from above Pirates. The gallery was originally designed to be Walt's personal apartment, as the one above the Main Street fire station was kind of small.
That doesn't surprise me, because sometimes when we've been on that ride, I look above and it looks like there's some of those, some of those chambers there up above where
you can see the control.
You can see them
if you keep looking up.
So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little apartment or a little place behind those chambers, because I've kind of sensed that riding those rides. Yep. Yeah. So we took a lot of pictures. I wonder if we see a little boy in those pictures.
You never know.
Well, we should take a look at our pictures.
Exactly.
Now, there's another one for the Haunted Mansion. It's a video of what looks like security footage outside the Haunted Mansion on the walkway. It appears to be a figure of a person although the image is transparent, walking around at night. And there's a video link that you can post on, you can take a look on Facebook. It's called 5 Disneyland Ghosts Caught on Video. And you can take a look and see what that ghost looks like.
It's actually very impressive. If you go ahead and click on that, you can see it.
Now, speaking of the Haunted Mansion.
So another family was caught. Remember the woman who was caught trying to put her son's ashes in Disney in the Haunted Mansion? She did on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
Another family was caught sprinkling the ashes of a loved one inside the Haunted Mansion, but cast members were unable to figure out who was doing it. That night at closing, one of the cast members found some of the dirt in the Kew graveyard disturbed. Upon closer inspection, the cast member discovered an empty urn, engraved with "Rest in peace, our dearest Grandma Joyce." Allegedly, the urn spent several months sitting in the video surveillance room in the ride until a couple of cast members took it up into the catwalk and set up a makeshift shrine to Grandma Joyce. The cast members discouraged this behavior and are often left to clean it up, but that hasn't stopped people from over the decades from dropping the remains of their dearly departed loved ones into the ride.
It's easy for people, I bet, to think that that's part of the ride and the attraction, because don't they have like a little makeshift graveyard there?
Yeah, as you walk, get your lineup queued, we get inside.
Right, and then they have these little, these little engravings on the grave to make it look real.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody thought that that was part of the attraction. They didn't realize it was a real urn.
That when they said they set it up in the control room, that means the public can't see it.
Okay.
That's up above.
No, I mean before they did that.
Oh, when they found the urn.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think twice.
You wouldn't think twice, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that was nice that they did that to respect, but of course...
But they don't realize it's a ride, so people go through and sweep up and clean out the ride. So when you dump your family's remains in the Haunted Mansion, they're going to get swept up at the end of the night and thrown away.
It's not a good idea.
No, it's not a good idea.
Okay. Now, this one's called the People Mover Ghost.
Disneyland, okay.
Yeah. It's actually one of the rides that people miss most often at Disneyland Park. It's called the People Mover, which that's a ride I've never been on.
Yeah, I've never been on it either. I guess it was, I want to say it probably was shut down at the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, because I don't even see people talking about that.
Did you ever see it when you were there?
No, never.
Maybe it was just the 80s?
Maybe it wasn't all that popular, and that's why they've shut it down.
Well, I know that was the case, that they thought it was kind of dangerous too, because it literally was a conveyor belt. And it had walls on either side, but it's like you're standing. You know when you go to the airport, they have those conveyor belts to get faster.
Sure.
That's exactly what the People Mover was.
Oh, okay.
So I can imagine they probably had people who would try to jump on the wall and maybe fall over. Or it was probably dangerous, so they probably got rid of it.
Well, they mentioned here that there was really nothing thrilling about the ride, but it provided a nice, easy break at the end of the day when guests couldn't take. When guests wanted to relax, they wanted to go on a ride, but they were tired. Can
you imagine designing that? What a most useless ride can there be?
I know. Well, they said the ride reportedly has a ghost associated with it. In 1967, there's an urban legend that tells of a teenage boy who got killed on the ride. They can't imagine how it happened, but guests and cast members believe the story, and they talk about how he likes to haunt that part of Tomorrowland where the ride used to exist.
Yep.
And the stories say that he likes to pull the hair of blonde guests. So I guess he had a thing for blondes.
Or maybe that was his mother, or reminds him of his mother or someone else.
Or he likes blonde girls. He was a teenager.
Or he likes blonde girls and just likes to pull their hair.
Right.
That's possible.
Yeah.
This is another story about America Sings, which you saw, but when I saw it, it was Innovations. Later on it turned into Carousel of Progress, which turned into Innovations, which was literally a giant science interaction. So they had tables and kids could interact with science and see telescopes. And when I went there, all the stuff broke. It was broken. Nothing worked. It was the most unimpressive thing I've ever seen. And that's why they shut it down. So when I went back, it was shut down. But this big round rotating building, which is the same building that Debbie died in, east end of Tomorrowland, originally was Carousel of Progress, showcasing predictions of products for the year and not so near future. It closed in the early 70s and reopened in the summer of 74 as America Sings, a show highlighting the musical history of the first 200 years of the United States. Now, 2 weeks after the new attraction opened, a new ride operator, Deborah Stone, as we said, was killed and crushed.
Yeah.
But the building is also to be haunted by the ghost of a teenage boy who died in the speed tunnel section of the People Mover, which is the outer edge of the building. The boy died while trying to jump from one car to another and was dragged along the tracks before the ride came to a stop.
Ouch.
Yeah, so that, I mean, geez, to have someone die on such an unmiraculous ride is kind of sad.
What a way to go. Jeez.
Yeah, it's sad, actually.
Yeah. Now, here's another one in the Haunted Mansion. I had a feeling that Haunted Mansion it just does.
A little bit more to it?
Yeah, definitely. They said that during the 20 years of development, Disney's Imagineer Mark Davis decided that Gregory Rasputin, this seemingly unkillable Russian mystic, would make a great, frightening phantom. And after all, when it takes stabbing, poisoning, 4 shootings, a clubbing, and a drowning to adequately kill someone, there's a good chance they'll make a pretty scary ghost.
Probably.
Yeah. So Mark Davis began to draw up a spooky portrait of Rasputin, capitalizing on his hypnotic eyes by designing a painting that would gradually morph into an eerie, all-seeing eyeball. I think we've seen that painting, haven't we?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay. But the creepy concept was well received by the other Imagineers, but when it hit the desk of Walt Disney, he immediately rejected Rasputin's ghost. As it turns out, Disney wasn't frightened by the idea of having the infamous healer take up residence as a ghost in the Haunted Mansion, even with his fairly gruesome demise and dismembered penis, but was far more afraid of being sued because it was based off a real person. Yep. Yeah. So at the time, Grigor Rasputin had only been dead for a little over 3 decades, and as such, still had plenty of living relatives with their family members. Well-publicized deaths still fresh in their minds. They still remembered it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to have used Rasputin in the Haunted Mansion would have been an invitation for legal trouble, and to be fair, angering the family of an infamous Russian wizard is probably a terrible idea to begin with.
Yes.
So in the end, Disney scrapped the idea of using famous figures in the Haunted Mansion completely. Although echoes of the original concept still linger in the attraction, those who pay close attention can even spot many of these original figures reworked as a Sinister 11 portraits, which hang inside the Haunted Mansion in Orlando's Disney World, complete with eyes that follow your every move. And these days they've been regulated to the load-in area of the mansion, sadly, with plain old eyeballs. But, I believe that, because remember I said, do we see that portrait? Because sometimes some of these portraits, they look like they could be somebody, but they're not an exact copy of what that person actually, who that person was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so that tells you there's lots of stories. People have lots of experiences at Disney parks with ghosts and other paranormal experiences.
And I've often heard from, I actually recently heard from somebody who actually works as a mortician, that Walt Disney himself was preoccupied with death, and he used death images a lot in building Disneyland and in some of his characters. And of course,
well, just thinking about his age. There's also spiritualist, obviously rises and falls after world wars. He was in World War II himself. So, I could see where that stuff could happen. And
people mention about Snow White that it's actually necrophilia when the prince bends over and kisses Snow White when she's supposed to be laying dead. But we all know that Snow White, though, was originally a Grimm's tale. So actually it was the Grimms who was obsessed with it, not necessarily Disney with that story. So
and we've done a show on paranormal Grimm's fairy
we
tales.
have,
and they're very grim, folks.
Yeah, we should bring that one back for people to listen to,
But we did a good example of how grim they used to be before Disney kind of cleaned them up a little bit. So anything that's grim in Disney, you haven't seen anything, folks, until you read some of the original stories.
Right.
All right, so that was an interesting episode, something everyone's familiar with, Disneyland and Disney theme parks in general, and the paranormal. So I thought that was a good idea for a
Yeah, and it was fun, and it kind of makes me want to visit the park again.
There you go, and look for all the little things that people talk about, all the stories. All right, folks, until next week, till next time, see you later.
See you next time. Bye.
Portal.
Royalty-free, copyright-free music by Kevin MacLeod and Ross Bugden.